Robert, you said that your preparation for this film was spending 2 weeks in your hotel room worrying, and then before camera rolled, you went to David Cronenberg's house for a pre-chat. What sort of things did he tell you to try and put your mind at ease?
Tell me to stop worrying. and what did you say? You basically, I mean, it was kind of fairly simple. I think you heard me in a very obvious throes of a panic attack. And so you're just like, why don't you just, like, you know, I think you were just placating me, like saying to come around. But I think you just said, you know, when we start shooting, you know, just what will be will be. I mean, and it's a really difficult way, because I mean, it's why I keep thinking actors have gotten to such a, you know, the job of acting now is, people all interpret it to be, you've got to analyze it, you've got to be a psychoanalyst as well, but that's just from the 50s. I mean, before that, actors only ever thought about their voice and their face and movement, it wasn't your job, wasn't called upon. And so, like, you read DeLillo, I mean, I'm not a postmodernist like scholar or anything. I mean, I'm not going to come up with a better...
Your agent said you were.
So I'm sitting there thinking, like, can I come up with, you know, an interpretation of DeLillo that's completely original in 2 weeks? Like, I mean, it's literally, like, completely ridiculous. But there's something about the construction in his writing that's so easy, you don't need to add anything to it, and I think that's what you just encouraged me to do. There were no rewrites in the script, and normally, I mean, that's the first thing you're thinking about as an actor, because normally the script's just shit, and so you're just there's no foundation to stand on in the first place, and you're so used to just changing it the whole time, every single movie, that with this, once you suddenly get to the idea to think, we're not changing any of the script. The script is fine. It's you that's the problem. At least you know one thing.
Robert, did you find that to be true?
Yeah, there's definitely some of the stuff in the limo, having the camera at the end of a crane. I think normally what you try and do is try and connect to whoever's looking through the camera, because it's just so much easier to interpret. Like, there's an actual eyeball there rather than just an inanimate object. But because it was so far away, it was remote controlled at the end of a techno crane, you kind of get used to the idea of having this relationship with a machine, and it's separate. You separate any kind of the fact that there's any human whatsoever watching, and after a while, it's really fun. Like, you kind of. I like not being able to see anything apart from a camera, especially when it's so dark. You can't even really see what the camera was. And the Alexa looks kind of funny as well. Yeah. Like, it doesn't look like a normal film camera. Yeah, it definitely changed things. And also the kind of the way the camera moved, it wasn't just like a normal. There wasn't anything organic about the pan or anything. It was all like clockwork, it does change your performance. Yeah, I guess that's kind of my process now. I have to go through the motions of feeling like I'm going to have a heart attack for a little while before. But it's something... I know the first scene with Jay Baruchel, it didn't help that I'd chosen to completely remove everything that I could actually use to do the scene, where they had these completely tinted out sunglasses and stuff, and the most plain suit you could possibly have, him stuck in the seat. And then Jay, on top of that, was so scared he looked like he was going to start crying. and so we were sort of sitting there, like, both of us absolutely terrified. But it kind of... And we did a few more takes for that first scene than we did for later things. But, I mean, it's just... I think David just being, like, calm. And also... just knowing that someone's watching the monitor, actually watching, because that's a lot of the time when you really start to flounder. It's when you get it into your head that but no one's really watching, and then you're just so any direction, anything at that point, you're just like, you have no idea what you're doing, so I'm going to try and take it upon myself to control everything, and you can't because you're not behind the camera, and you're trying to picture yourself from outside yourself, which is impossible, and it becomes an awful experience. But as soon as you think, it's just a trust thing. As soon as you think someone's watching and you trust their opinion about it, then you can follow you can follow your instincts and not be detached, I think. So that's the question.
And also, we have microphones, which just wait a sec before you actually ask the question. So yeah, go ahead. We'll give you...
Hey. Oh, can you hear me? All right. Rob, there's a lot of...
Introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Jonathan Deckel, Dose/Postmedia. Rob, there's a lot of parallels between your real life and the character. I'm wondering what did you bring from your personal experience to the character, if you brought anything at all?
I love when we were in Cannes, someone asked that question, and David says, which is a new thing which I've taken into my own vernacular, and he said, that's a flawed question.
He said he couldn't answer the question. I said, of course you can't answer the question because it's a very flawed question. There's nothing, actually, in his life that is equivalent to this guy's life. It's not the same.
No explanation.
I'll let him, carry on.
I mean, there was one thing, the relationship with Kevin, because it's a very specific relationship, having a relationship with security. And that's one thing which I kind of had an idea about. But the other stuff, being the isolation stuff, is totally different because he's not. He's chosen his life. So and there's very little resemblance to reality. I don't think. I mean, are you talking about the whale which came up the river?
Whale?
The London whale is the guy who just traded a couple of $1 billion.
Oh, I thought you were talking about when the whale came up the river, because I was like, that's the best metaphor for it. That was the most...
That is what I meant. Forget that other London whale.
No, the whale who got the baby whale came out of the Thames and got stuck in the Thames and became this incredible celebrity. And I was like, that's the most beautiful idea.
Well, either way, okay, we can go here first, and then we'll go up to Adam afterwards. Yeah. Thanks.
I didn't know about the baby whale.
Hi, Sean Plummer from MSN Canada. A question for Mr. Cronenberg and Mr. Pattinson. My wife and I were actually out for a walk last summer, and we stumbled upon the Cosmopolis set. And I was curious because I'm wondering, why are all these people gathered around Geary Avenue in this auto body shop? And I asked security, and it was Cosmopolis. And I'm just wondering for you, Mr. Cronenberg, I'm assuming that has never happened before. You've had, well, maybe I'm wrong, but has that ever happened before where you've had these huge crowds watching your sets? And also, so what was that like? And for Mr. Pattinson, I know you've had similar experiences with other productions. Do Canadian crowds compare to the ones who disrupted Remember Me in New York, for instance?
It wasn't a massive difference. I mean, generally, people are pretty nice. It's very confusing as to why people will sit there and watch for a long time. But this one was a little bit more frightening. I definitely know the first scene which we did. I think it was the first time I was outside of the limo, and there was a big crowd lined up, and we were. It seemed like it was a big shot as well. We'd shut down the whole street and everything and set up the shot, and me and Kevin there got the sunglasses on and everything, looking really serious, looking like some. I don't know. They were also shooting Men in Black 3 at the same time, which and it looked like a similar. And then that was in New York, and then Will Smith jumped out some window, and an explosion goes off, and then everyone's waiting to see what's going to happen, and then we were speaking, barely even opening our mouths, and then that was that. And all these people, it was sort of, I don't know. I was so terrified the whole time that it's gonna. People who are waiting around would sort of spread the word that it's the most boring film ever. I was so nervous as soon as we went out when there was anybody watching. Canadian. I mean, they're generally pretty nice.
We're chilled, you know.
People in London were. I don't know. I think we were doing the interview together, and then someone was saying about what the tagline was for the movie, and I can't remember exactly what it was now, but I was thinking like, that's the tagline, and both of us didn't know what it was. And I just found out the other day it was from one of the fan-made posters, and a whole bunch of journalists thought it was the real one.
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson, I just wanted to find out from you, your fans that loved you in Twilight, what do you have to say to them before they go and see this film, which you're really good in?
I don't know. I mean, I think they'll like it. You hope that there's something about what you brought to the part in every job you do, which people like about it. Not just, they don't just like your work as in a totally abstract way. They just say like, I'm a Twilight fan, therefore I like Twilight, even if I don't like it. So hopefully they kind of, and I liked the Twilight scripts in the same way that I like this, and so hopefully they will appreciate it.
For Mr. Pattinson and Mr. Giamatti, could you talk a little bit about that whirlwind scene you do together and what the motivation was for each of your characters, what you're thinking during that scene?
So, you're shooting at me before I come in, and then you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. I know. It's totally bizarre.
There is, like, I think there's an ease between them as well, which is
That's also.
yeah. It's not a confrontation scene like a normal confrontation scene. It's both of them really, they want answers from it.
Yeah.
I can't even explain. David was saying the night before, because the scene was written just two guys sitting across a table, and they were there the whole time, I think. And and David was saying, I can't tell if that's interesting or if we should move around. I was like, this is a 22-page long scene.
Somebody better move.
But when we got there, it kind of just, I had one idea, which was I hadn't even seen the set, and I just wanted to do a scene talking into the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
And I just thought that would be funny. And then so I kept thinking, how can I get into the toilet?
That's great.
And then there was a porta potty. It wasn't even how I expected it, and but because of that, when we started moving around everywhere, and also because the set looked good, it looked really cool. I mean, there's all this interesting stuff, and so we
The
just
set
kind
is
of,
brilliant.
Yeah.
The set is brilliant.
There wasn't
None of it's-
any relevance, was it? They just had a pile of computers.